A remarkable road trip. Number 1. On the evening of May 19, 1903, Dr. Horatio Nelson Jackson accepted a challenge to do something that nobody had done before. The terms of this challenge included driving from San Francisco, California to New York City in 90 days. If he succeeded, he will win $50. All right, so the most important part right here will be that he accepted the challenge of driving from San Francisco, California to New York City in 90 days. That is the amount of time and he was supposed to be driving. Number 2, remember, we're looking for the VIP, and so far as I have read, I can tell that this is an informational passage. So I know the kinds of questions they're going to be asking for it. Number 2, although today it is not unusual to drive across the country in just a few days, this was not always the case. The automobile was a new product in 1903 and cars were not as advanced as today's vehicles. If you see, I can find a synonym. There you go. Okay. In 1903, many people believed that cars were a luxury. This because they were very expensive and a source of entertainment rather than a useful means of transportation. Horse-drawn carriages were considered more dependable. You know these words from the Narnia story, remember? Jackson, however, wanted to prove that cars could be just as useful and reliable. So this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to prove this point. Cars are useful, reliable. Another word for reliable is trust. Okay, I have a subtitle here. Let me use another color. Preparing for the trip. So over here, the first 2 paragraphs are talking about like the preview, who the person was and what was the challenge and what was his point. So we're talking about Dr. Jackson, who wanted to drive, or he was challenged to drive from San Francisco, California to New York City in 90 days. And in a time where cars were not that common, and he wanted to prove that cars were useful and reliable. So this is what I did, rephrasing the very important part. Now I'm going to go to how he prepared. These two are going to be talking about preparation. Jackson hired mechanic Saul K. Crocker to join him on the cross-country drive, so he hired this man. Crocker suggested that Jackson buy a Winton touring car for the journey. Jackson took Crocker's suggestion under advisement and bought a car used from a banker in San Francisco. Okay, it was a used car. Because gas stations did not exist in those days, Jackson decided to carry tanks of gasoline. This is very dangerous, which would be refilled at general stores along the way. Jackson, this sounds like cause and effects, guys, right? So there were not many gas stations, so he had to carry the gas with him. Cause and effect. There you go. Jackson also bought other supplies and equipment for the journey. To make room for supplies, Crocker removed the car's backseat. Well, he was not going to drive any more people, so he didn't need that. Let's move on to the next one, a difficult journey. I bet it was difficult. Number 5. On May 23rd, 1903, in the early afternoon, Jackson and Crocker left San Francisco. So this is the date the journey started. They had driven only 15 miles when a rear tire became flat. Quickly, they were able to use the spare tire, the extra tire, for the rest of that day's journey. If you pay attention as I was reading, I skipped this part over here, which is very important because this part belongs to the preparation. These are supplies. You have cooking equipment, sleeping bags, car cover, warm clothing, tools, rope, camera, a spare tire. And as you can see, that was important. Let me go back to the red color. Number 6. Another problem Jackson and Crocker encountered was getting accurate directions. Accurate directions. Accurate means right, correct, right? In 1903, there were no road maps. Nowadays, we have the GPS. And travel guidebooks were published for only certain parts of the country. Advice from strangers, a compass, and landmarks such as railroad tracks and mountains help guide the man. So, this is what they did to guide themselves. Advice from people, a compass, and landmarks such as mountains. Sometimes the directions they received were incorrect, I bet, and they had to turn around and locate the correct route. At other times, Jackson was forced to change course to avoid flooded or snow-covered land. This paragraph is talking about the problems they encounter. Problems. Okay? So, number 7. In addition, in 1903, there were only about 150 miles of paved roads. That's another problem. You didn't see as many roads as we have nowadays across the country. Most roads were dirt paths. That had been used mainly for horse-drawn carriages in remote areas. And this is an underlined word that they're going to be asking me about. So I'm going to circle that one. In remote areas where roads did not exist, remote areas, no roads, Jackson drove through muddy pastures and even over mountains. So, what is the meaning of remote? What can I infer? Those kinds of places that are not visited that much. How do I know this? Because they're talking about mountains with no roads. So people didn't visit them that often because they didn't need those roads. The bumpy ride sometimes jarred equipment loose and caused it all to fall off the car. They also experienced many flat tires. So flat tires, losing equipment, dead batteries, or still problems. Number 8. I'm going to change to blue. Finding tires and other car parts for repairs was difficult. This is a problem. And then all the rest are going to be details. In 1903, there were only 850 Winton vehicles in the country. Replacement parts had to be ordered directly from the Winton car factory and delivered by stagecoach or train. Jackson wisely ordered new car parts ahead of time. Oh, he was smart. So that they will be waiting for him when he arrived in the next town. Wow. Then he will have to find a blacksmith to install the parts. Some generously worked overnight to help them in. This is good. Okay, another subtitle, the positive side. So after the trip, well, what is the good thing? Look at this. Looks like an ad, like an advertisement. The auto area, the Winton Motor Carriage Company. This is nice. Jackson and Crocker's journey was not entirely filled with difficulties. One thing that kept the trip enjoyable was Bud, a bulldog. That's the reason why they have that logo. A bulldog Jackson had bought in California, but became the team's mascot, traveling with the men wherever they went. Jackson even put goggles on Bud to keep the dust out of his eyes. The dog was a source of joy to Jackson and Crocker, who would gaze over and see. These are synonyms. A happy but riding alongside them by the journey's end, but was a celebrity indeed. Local newspapers reported on the team's progress as they passed through each town, and neighboring towns became aware of the team's upcoming arrival. Residents came to see the man enter Winton, greeting them with cheers. I'm sorry, this didn't make sense. The event was especially exciting since many people had never before seen a car. How exciting is this? Wow. And this photo, these are the men, and that is a car. And the newspapers gave them publicity. I'm reversing what I read. The last section of the passage is mission complete when they arrived, I guess. I'm going to switch to blue. Jackson, Crocker, and Budd reached New York City on July 26, 1903. The team completed the journey in 63 days, 12 hours, and 30 minutes. And I think the goal was to be less than 90 days. It is estimated that the team had driven more than 5,600 miles. Although Jackson won the $50, he spent a total of $80,000 on the trip. Well, that's just bad math. Was it worth the cost? Jackson believes so. Jackson and Crocker's success changed American driving forever. The idea that people could travel long distances in a vehicle, this is what they won. Travel long distances in a vehicle. It was a reality. Jackson was able to see many beautiful parts of the country and dreamed that one day others will be able to experience America's landscape, just as he had. Landscape is the surroundings of you. Today, Jackson's Winston is displayed in the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C., taking its rightful place in history. This is nice. All right, the questions. 29. The author informs author's purpose, the reader, that is me, about Jackson's journey mainly by how do I know about the journey? Sharing Jackson's thoughts as he traveled? We don't know any of his thoughts. Remember the pie? Persuade, inform, entertain, and we are talking about an informative text. How did they let me know about the trip? Listing the supplies. This is part of the information, but I'm not so sure that is the most important thing. Describing the difficulties and successes. Difficulties and successes. This sounds good, right? Explaining how much money he spent. I don't think so. So we have two to decide. So would it be the supplies? What is more important? To let me know about the things that he took with him, or the difficulties he encountered and the successes he had? The most important thing is to learn the difficulties and successes. That's the right question, the right answer. Number 30. The reader can conclude, remember inferences, that people came to see Jackson and Crocker during their trip because people were, I guess, curious. I'm going to write it down before I forget. And I underlined a part that said that it was the first time seeing a car. First time seeing a car. Oh, so now that I have thought about it, I'm going to read my choices. People were interested in hearing news about nearby towns. No. People were curious to see what the vehicle looked like. This sounds like it. People were eager to sell. No. People were hoping to join them. No. Certainly not. This is my correct answer. 31. The photograph of Bud next to paragraph 9 helps the reader understand that the dog, remember the publicity, the advertisement? I'm going to write it down here with a little dog. So let's see. Was a rare breed at the time? No, they were not rare. They were not rare dogs. B. Had trouble for most of its life? We have no idea. Became famous, this sounds like it, right? Became famous as a result of the trip. Guided Jackson, no, they didn't know where he was. So this is my correct answer. 32, what is the main idea of the selection? They love this question, but we're talking about the whole passage. So before I read my choices, I'm going to think, what are they talking about? They're talking about the trip. They're talking about the car. They're talking about the first long trip, right? All right. So letter F. In 1903, paved roads were rare in the United States, but they became more common. We don't know this. Guys, be careful. We're talking about main idea. We're not talking about summary, okay? Letter G. In 1903, Jackson and Crocker drove a car across the United States and found that cars had many problems. Definitely no. H. In 1903, many Americans had never before seen a car until Jackson and Crocker drove across the country. This sounds like it, right? In 1903, Jackson and Crocker drove across the United States, which was a great accomplishment at the time. This one sounds even better because uh, people not seeing or seeing a car for the first time sounds like a detail, not a main idea. And letter J sounds more complete. So this is the correct answer. This is a correct answer. In 1903, Jackson and Crocker drove across the United States. This is what happened. Remember? Trip, car, which was a great accomplishment that first time. Great accomplishment at that time. So I have all the ideas that I wrote down are included in the letter J. That's my correct answer. A compare and contrast pattern is used to organize ideas in paragraph 2 mainly. 2. So we know that it's compare and contrast. We know it's in paragraph 2. You should go back and reread paragraph 2. And what is the purpose? Use to. This is the purpose. So we're going to write down purpose there. To explain how the problems of car travel were different from other methods of travel. To describe the difference regarding car travel. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go back to the passage. Hold on. Okay, I have my paragraph 2. It says, although today it is not unusual to drive across the country in just a few days, this was not always the case. So it's comparing past and present time. The automobile was a new product in 1903, and cars were not as advanced as today's vehicles. So it's comparing today's cars with the cars from before. In 1903, many people believed that cars were a luxury and a source of entertainment rather than a useful means of transportation. So right now we see cars as a means of transportation. Before it was just a luxury. Horse-drawn carriages were considered more dependable. Jackson, however, wanted to prove that cars could be just as useful and reliable. So it's comparing cars nowadays with the past. Now, let me underline again. So we have compare and contrast. Explain how the problems of is it talking about problems? Definitely not. Describe the difference regarding car travel and today. Sounds like it. Show difference between Jackson's decisions? Not at all. We're not talking about Jackson's decisions. Emphasize how the events of 1903 affected his trip? Not at all. The correct answer is this one. Cars, the difference in cars between nowadays and 1903. Moving on, the subheadings help the reader understand that the selection focuses mainly on. So the subheadings, those little subtitles, I'm going to write down, it's another word, subtitles, that let me know what the section was going to be about. So my question is, it helps us understand that the progress of Jackson's trips across the country? No, because it was like before the trip, the supplies, during the trip, all the problems, and after the trip, remember? So no, I don't think it's the progress of his trip. I don't know. Well, there's a dot in there. Letter G. The reason. Do we know the reason? The whole selection? The whole selection was about that? No. The purpose of the challenge. The purpose of the challenge. No, that was just the beginning. And the way that cars changed. We don't know how cars changed. This is totally wrong. So my correct answer is the progress. The progress. Progress. Like progress reports. Progress. It has a beginning, during, and after. before, right? 35. What effect did Jackson Strip have on American society? What I remember, I'm not gonna read this just yet. The effect, like cause and effect, uh, they actually believe that we could drive long distances in a car. Long distance. Okay, I'm gonna read the choices. Sales of winter cars increased. I don't know. Newspapers became. Nah, this is incorrect. People changed their ideas about the usefulness of cars. I think so. People travel to many unexplored parts of the country. This could be a consequence, but we don't know. Maybe they were able to travel, but they were using horses, not necessarily cars, right? So I don't think this is it. I have two to choose from. I have news sales of winter cars. This doesn't make sense, right? People change their ideas about the usefulness of cars. That was a correct answer. 36. What does the word remote mean in paragraph 7? If you remember, I wrote down that in those remote places there were no roads. And I said that they were not visited. Uh, and it was the mountains, and I think it's they were far away. Those were the words that I was thinking. So now I can read my choices. Remote means lacking tourist attractions. Okay, tourist attractions. I don't know. Far. I have that one here. Far. Difficult to see? No. Familiar? No. So I have letter F and letter G to choose from. I don't think we can consider the attractions because it doesn't even have roads. So this is my correct answer because that's what I was thinking. A remote place is a place that is very far away, that no one visits. There are no roads. Okay, guys, the question that always comes. Summary for the difficult journey. It must have a beginning, a middle, and end, right? With the very important parts. We don't need details. Here we go. Jackson and Crocker left San Francisco after only 50 miles of driving, their rear tire went flat. Guys, this is a detail. Do I really need to know that? They got a flat tire. They got many flat tires during their trip. I don't think so. They were able to use a spare tire for the rest of the day. This one is talking about the same thing. This is a detail. They had trouble getting accurate directions at time. I guess this is also a detail. And bad weather was also an obstacle for completing. No, they did complete it. So this is wrong. Letter B. Jackson and Crocker encountered many difficulties on their trip. This is true. Sometimes they got lost, their car frequently needed repairs, and they encountered harsh weather. This sentence is great. It doesn't give you details, it gives you just the VIPs. They planned well though and received help when they needed it. Guys, I'm just going to put a dot in here. I'm not so sure. Let me move on and check. Letter C. When Jackson and Crocker left San Francisco, they could not predict what will happen to them in the next 3 months. During their journey, they drove on many dirt paths. Guys, dirt paths? Really? Do I need to know that? People helped the two men repair their car. Really? When it broke down from the rough travel, it doesn't have an ending. This one doesn't have an ending. Remember? This one, the ending was wrong. This one, I don't know. Letter B. I'm going to check on letter C. When Jackson and Crocker drove across the country, the land was difficult to cross. The roads were bumpy and fields were often muddy. Bad weather made travel even more difficult and caused the car to break down at times. Everything is perfect, except it doesn't say that they actually did it. Let me go back to my letter B. Jackson and Crocker encountered many difficulties on their trip. Sometimes they got lost, the car frequently needed repairs, and they encountered harsh weather. They planned well, though, and received help when they needed it. But it says that they received help and they did plan well. And this one doesn't end with a positive note. It says car broke down many times. And it says right here that they did plan well. So letter A, we know that is totally wrong. No ending, right? And it's wrong. The ending is wrong because it said that they didn't complete the journey. Letter D, it's wrong because it says that uh, it was very difficult. The car broke down many times, and that was it. Letter C is wrong because it says again the car broke down, and that's it. The only one that ends with a positive note is letter B. Guys, be very careful with the summary. Sometimes you're going to be like, "Oh, I don't know which one." Always eliminate the ones you know are not okay. Use the strategy beginning, middle, and end with the VIP, no details, and you will find the answer. The only choice of all those four that end with a positive thinking that they actually did something good, that they actually accomplished something, was the letter B. Was the only one. The other ones have negatives at the end. So no. All right, next one. Based on the information in the selection, what can the reader infer? We love this, right? About the American society in 1903. What can they infer? Well, they didn't use cars very much, for one thing. They were not used to. And there were not a lot of roads for cars. They were roads like dirt roads just for the carriages of the horses' carriages. And there were no maps. And I think so, right? O sea, I mean, that's it. Those are the only ones I know. Now that I have thought about it, I can check my answers. F. Most people did not travel far from the towns in which they live. I can infer that. They didn't move a lot. Many people dislike the changes. I know this is very general. We're not talking about new inventions. We're just talking about the cars. And I don't think they dislike that. So that is totally wrong. Many people oppose the idea of the government building roads. Not at all. The automobile had replaced the need for farm animals, guys, really? No. What is my correct answer? They did not travel far because they couldn't travel for many hours. They had to use they didn't have cars. They were expensive. They had horses carriages, so they didn't get to go very far. They couldn't travel for many hours. Okay, and question 29, I'm sorry, 39 says, which idea is supported by the photograph? We love these kinds of questions, right? Photograph. Guys, I pasted the photograph right here. Remember, we can see the guys, we can see the car, and people very curious when they were arriving. We don't need to read the passage, we're just talking about the photograph. So if it's a supported, what idea is supported is what does this photo tell me? Now that I have thought about it, I can read my choices. Jackson had to make many repairs to the car as he traveled. Do we see him repairing the car? No. Jackson refilled his gasoline tanks at general stores. Do we see him refilling? No, right? No. Jackson traveled a great distance between stops along his trips. How do we know that he was traveling a long distance in the photo? Does the photo show me that? No. Jackson was welcomed by crowds. Those things I can see in the photo when he arrived to a new town. And that's the correct answer, and we're finished.